And it creates this pattern interrupt, and it causes people to kind of wake up out of this unconscious paralysis or stupor that they're in and pay attention. You are listening to Amplify Your Success Podcast, episode 325. And today I'm going to share a quick visibility hack that drives ideal clients into your sales calls and consultations. You ready for this? Let's get started. Welcome to the Amplify Your Success Podcast. Get ready to ramp up your revenue, amplify your impact, and make your mark in the world. This is the show for experts, thought leaders, and service professionals who want to shatter their limits and achieve that next level. You're going to find out from other experts and influencers how they made it. Now, let's get amplified. Hey there, inspired entrepreneurs and business leaders. It is your host, Melanie Benson. And today we're going to go a little bit deeper into visibility. And I want to talk about something that I'm noticing is not being done enough. And what happens is, I think people are watching what other people are doing online and in their visibility strategies and in their podcast guesting strategy or speaking strategy, and they're trying to replicate it rather than deep diving into their own, what I call guest expert system. It's your messaging strategy, your visibility strategy, and how you deliver talks and interviews that pull like a magnet your ideal clients towards you. I will admit that I fully discovered this by doing it all wrong at first. And luckily, when I first started my business, we didn't have such a saturated market. So standing out was not the way it is today. Like, you didn't have to really have a sophisticated messaging strategy like you do today. So this visibility hack is something that I learned from the School of Hard Knocks, plus having some extraordinary mentors along the way that really helped pull me out of my blindness, if you will, and help me really see what's going to work. And this visibility strategy is one of the things that I talk about in my free download, the 17 mistakes that are costing you leads and clients in your podcast guesting strategy. And we are getting ready to open up Guest Expert System again. And this is a great way to kind of give yourself a scorecard and see where you are landing. And by the way, if you're not a guest on other people's stages and platforms and podcasts, I want you to commit to do it right now. This is one of the best ways to get visible to ideal clients. And if you're not doing that, I definitely want you to go download this free resource. We've updated a little bit, so if you already have it, go get the new version. The scorecard is super insightful to help you really assess where you can ramp up your results quickly by being a guest expert. If you go to melaniebenson.com/magnetize, you can download that free resource. And if you want to check out Guest Expert System, because we are limiting seats in the next cohort, then you'll definitely want to nab one of the early registrations. And hey, you'll score some really cool resources that are only for our first takers. So guestexpertsystem.com, melaniebenson.com/magnetize. And we will also link that up in the show notes. Now, let me get into this visibility hack. This visibility hack is magnetic messaging. And why is this a visibility hack? Because first of all, there's a lot of people that do what I call muddy messaging, or maybe a better way to call it is lazy messaging. And I will admit, I did this for many years. I had a hard time wrapping my head around how it was all going to work because I do what I do so innately. It's such a second nature superpower that I had a hard time articulating it and trying to figure out how to build the bridge between my client's world and the world that I knew I could help them achieve. And it wasn't until 2009, when the market really changed a lot, that I kind of felt invisible for a while, and I had to lean back into some of the foundations like magnetic messaging. And here's what happens with magnetic messaging. When you have a magnetic message, hopefully in front of ideal clients, you are sharing something that is so relevant and so necessary in their world right now that it's almost like you snap them out of like the lull that they're in, or most people are kind of on this constant treadmill of motion towards what they think they want, and a magnetic message pops for them. And it creates this pattern interrupt, and it causes people to kind of wake up out of this unconscious paralysis or stupor that they're in and pay attention. And so the visibility hack of magnetic messaging requires 3 things. First of all, it requires you to understand what it is that your most ideal clients need and are searching for. And secondly, it requires you to know how to build a bridge from where they're at in their world and lead them over the path to you as the go-to solution. That's why I talk so much about authority positioning and authority branding, is because our ideal clients, our communities that we serve, the people that we can most solve their problem or help them achieve their goals, they are probably being bombarded with a lot of messages that sound very similar. And the third piece is the specificity that comes when you really own who your ideal client is and what it is that you do specifically for them. I work with a lot of people on their messaging strategy when they come into Guest Expert System or into Mastermind, because in Mastermind, we give them access to that program. And often when I do this analysis or an audit of where people are, what I find very quickly is the messaging strategy they're using is causing them to blend into the background because they don't really know how to communicate what they do in a way that pops. So this is my belief, and what I'm seeing happen right now in our market is it's not enough to be clear. It's not enough to just say, hey, I can solve your content problem, or I can solve your lead generation problem, or I can solve your lack of profit problem, right? Depending on what the work you do in the world is. Ultimately, the specificity helps you stand out amongst all the other people. And there's so many different ways you can create specificity. I know sometimes people get a little locked up in, well, I can't promise a certain number of clients, or I can't promise a very specific outcome. That's okay. Sometimes being specific means you're talking to a specific kind of person or a specific type of solution they might be looking for. So this might be something you want to play with in your messaging. I was working with a guy a couple years back who was super talented. He was like at the top of his game as a high performance coach and mentor. He'd been trained by some of the best people on the planet. And yeah, he was invisible in his market because his messaging sounded like everybody else that did what he did. So we made a few very tiny tweaks to his message. And instead of he was trying to pitch some speaking gigs and he wanted to get on some more podcasts and he was just getting crickets. And so when we tweaked his messaging a little bit and we boosted up his own internal fire because he was clear on what he was talking about, he got a ton of podcasts saying, yes, I will book you. And so tiny tweaks can often result in a massive return on your effort, ROE, instead of ROI. There's one more piece that I think is really important to this, and that is when you've got the relevance and you've got the specificity in place, you need to be consistently in front of your community, your industry, and your audience with that messaging. So I've ran a few little experiments over the last few years, testing some new messaging, testing some new strategies, and I've discovered something really interesting. Oftentimes, it wasn't about the new clients that came in through a magnetic message. It was the onslaught of ideal speaking opportunities and coveted interviews and joint ventures and people who wanted to promote what I did that would turn on simply because I was consistently sharing a magnetic message that was relevant to those people's audiences. Now, this goes deeper into the collaboration strategies that I believe in, but I think we oftentimes undervalue or under-recognize the importance of the consistent messaging, getting in front of people who can open a door to a new audience for you. And by the way, the people that come into Guest Expert System, you know what their number one complaint is next to messaging? Actually, let's say it's their number 2 complaint. I don't know where to pitch my message. I don't know what stages to get on. Well, I do teach people how to pitch and how to get that pitch accepted. But what if you didn't have to pitch? What if that magnetic message did all the heavy lifting for you and turned on the steady stream of speaking gigs and podcasts and live shows, right? So the magnetic message, the way I like to think of it is when you get your messaging down, you're actually turning on a visibility hack that does all the work for you. Because if you're visible consistently with this magnetic message in front of audiences that can either book you or use your services, you should be getting business. Now, obviously, this goes back to who do you have in your orbit, right? Like, how have you been cultivating the relationships? And that's a whole nother episode. But I want you to really look at your strategy right now. Do you have a clear, consistent magnetic message that's getting in front of ideal clients? Here's some signs that maybe you don't. 1, when you put social posts out, when you are leveraging your content strategy on Facebook and Instagram or LinkedIn, you're getting crickets. 2, when you do see some traction, maybe you're noticing people are paying attention, or you're getting booked on podcasts, you're on shows, and you're doing the right visibility strategies, you're not getting anybody raising their hand and saying, I want more. 3, when you communicate your message, you feel foggy. You don't feel clear. You don't feel like you know how to articulate what you do in a way that's compelling and intriguing and getting that irresistible quality out there. 4, when you do have sales conversations, you're either talking to the wrong clients, like you're getting people to book calls and consultations, but they're like, I can't afford you, or they're saying like, I don't think this is for me, or you're getting people on sales calls that they're like, they don't even know why they're there and they're not saying yes. So you're getting momentum and action, but it's not leading to good results because somewhere the message was disconnected from what the offer really is. And that's that muddy messaging. The 4th thing is you literally, when you put yourself out there to speak or you pitch podcasters or hosts, you're not getting the fast yeses. You're not getting people saying absolutely, or hey, this is an interesting idea. We just had somebody on, or we already have another speaker talking about this. What else do you have? And here's why this is so important. Because when you've done a good job magnetically designing the message, they know you have great energy. They know there's something there. And it just may not be that message at that time is appropriate for their stage. This happens to me all the time. But instead of turning me away, they're like, well, what else have you got? Because I'd love to have you on the show. Because you're bringing your authority, your credibility, that powerful, irresistible quality into your messaging. And that's when the wheels start to turn and people are like, wow, this is great. I have this happen all the time with guests where I really like their messaging. I really like what they're bringing, but it's just not quite the right message right now. So I'll say, we like what you're doing. We've just booked too many people on this topic lately. So having those types of symptoms is a very clear sign that you need to dig deeper into your magnetic messaging and get that visibility hack working. So relevance, specificity, and consistency are really important in this formula. I'll just say one last thing, and that is if you find that trying to do a messaging strategy is like, you're like, I have a magnetic message, I have it, it's not working. Sometimes we're solving the wrong problem. And that's something you should look at is audience development and making sure that you're taking the right message to the right audiences. Now, how does this translate to more sales conversations, more consultations, more strategic discovery calls, whatever you call your enrollment process? When you have a magnetic message, you're speaking right to the desire of your ideal client. And when you match that with a really well thought out client journey, you've given them some opportunity to book a call with you or get to know you better, get to know your work through a lead magnet or a book, whatever that is for you. When you use this magnetic messaging and you have the visibility in front of the right audiences, You're going to see your sales conversations go up. You're going to see consultation requests go up because it is very clear how you solve the problem for your ideal client. That's the connection between the two. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. Would you give your magnetic message a 5, which is a top score? Or do you feel like it's a little muddy, maybe a 2 or 3? Or is it 0? Like, I know I don't even have a message. This can affect people who are brand new in business because you're still learning a lot of the foundational pieces. But what I found is even established business owners with a 6 or 7 or even 8-figure business can sometimes fall prey because they over-relied on referrals for a long time. And when the referral sources weren't enough to keep growing, or you realize that those referral sources have dried up, and you look for how do I get more leads and more visibility and more clients, you're going to turn to messaging. If your messaging isn't strong, you're going to get really frustrated and question if this is right for you. It is. There's always a way to be more visible, but you might need to do some messaging work. And so I hope you will join us in Guest Expert System if that speaks to you as a way of really getting your messaging down. Wherever you're listening to this episode, give me a little shout out in the DMs or the comments. Tell me, what do you believe your rating is on your message right now? I hope I see some 5s. And if you're less than a 5, let's definitely get that messaging magnetic. Thanks for tuning in today, Amplifier. Be sure to join us right now in the Amplify Your Authority community at authorityamplifiers.com, and I'll share my 7 proven tips to be a highly paid expert that stands out in a crowded market. Plus, we're going to keep this conversation going, and I want to hear from you how you're going to amplify your authority and make a greater impact. Before you go, please take a minute to give our show and our guests some love over on your favorite podcasting platform. Subscribe, rate, and review. Leave your full name, and I'll spotlight you and your authority on social media.